why is classroom voice lift system important? Experience has shown that voice lift system in a classroom can improve productivity, learning grades of a student. The advantage is the teacher no longer has to speak quite loudly in order for everybody to be heard. From the front of the classroom to the rear of the classroom, it's a lot of area to cover. Oftentimes, this can add to straining of the teacher's voice. So again, as the day goes on, their voice becomes less strong. Additionally, some issues happen is that if a teacher may be ill or something like that, it's hard when they're coming back to the school environment to speak, throughout a long day and allow for all the students to hear exactly what is being presented. So having a TOA IR-800 classroom system in a facility improves the classroom environment by making it easier place to learn. When that includes teaching as well as for the students in hearing what is being presented. Our IR classroom system has been specifically designed to offer enhancement, learning, teaching experience, which enables individuals to improve student productivity, engagement, learning, and grades, reduces teacher fatigue, eliminates problems with noise interferences. It's wireless too, so you can walk around to any point in the classroom without any dropouts. So that's nice depending on what's being presented. Sometimes classroom configurations change. It may be something presented at the front of the class or at the side and things of that sort. IR technology combines the signal to that room, eliminates eavesdropping, as well as when you have schools with multiple classrooms, you don't have to worry about frequency correlation that you may in an RF style system. So you can basically have 1 or 200 systems in a school because IR does not go past through the walls. The other advantage of IR technology is that you could potentially sign out and assign microphones to the teacher themselves, and they are responsible for that particular device. And as they move from room to room, the IR system automatically engages itself, so you don't have to change channels or settings. It's automatically active as they walk into a room. Once they walk out of a room, it disengages. Also, the advantage is it saves energy and time. Causes some problems we're looking to overcome. Hearing fatigue is one of many symptoms. It's part of the central nervous system disorder. Causes are not fully understood when we look at this, but some examples of hearing fatigue are boredom, inattentiveness, restlessness, and this relates to the students themselves in the classroom environment, and ultimately poor grades with the student. Some factors leading to listener fatigue are poor room acoustics, excessive volume levels, bad signal to noise, speech, interfering sounds, we'll talk about that in a minute, missing or false auditory cues, not understanding exactly what's being articulated by the teacher. So we look at these causes and problems and potentially methods to overcome these issues. So how do these factors lead into hearing fatigue? As I mentioned before, some suggestions regarding causes of hearing fatigue are poor room acoustics. Generally, small classrooms don't exhibit the characteristics that would be considered as bad acoustics, like reverberation, echo times, because they are quite small. Excessive sound levels are not usually experienced in classrooms, but in fact the opposite. They tend to be quite quiet. If you look at bad signal to noise, speech interfering sounds, having poor signal to noise can cause poor speech recognition. Low speech volumes combined with competing noise from outside the class or could be inside the class. Computers, fan noises, projectors, fans, HVAC, people walking down the classroom, things that all add to the signal to noise where the noise floor gets increased, but the teacher can only speak at a certain noise level or dB level. So that's when we talk about signal noise, that's what we're referring to. As mentioned before, missing false auditory cues. Varying speech levels at teachers, various voice speech levels as the teacher voice changes or direction of speaking, potentially to the class or away from the class, changes, and what that causes is the student to lose some of those voice cues, exactly what the teacher was saying. So again, as the teacher moves to different areas of the class, turns around, maybe interacting with a smart board, the dB level and intelligibility gets decreased in the classroom. So we'll look at the teacher and student voiceless solution. A properly designed and installed TOA IR-800 system can overcome some of these issues causing hearing fatigue. So the bad signal to noise issue, increasing the volume level of the teacher evenly throughout the classroom helps overcome the ambient noise levels, and these levels are often found again in the classroom. This helps improve the signal-noise ratio, leading to improved student attention. Again, when the students can hear what's being presented, they're more likely to be involved and really participate. When they start missing these cues, whether it's ambient noise, background noise, things like that, they tend to drift off. So it's very important that they can hear intelligibly what the teacher is presenting. By reducing teachers' fatigue, improved articulation over time is achieved. Back to the missing false auditory cues. A voiceless system of constant energy or sound levels, regardless of the location of the teacher in the classroom, it increases the focus of what's being said and presented. So again, the articulation of the teacher to the classroom, and that's definitely improved with an IR-800 TOA classroom solution. What we're going to look at now is some of the voice in the classroom scenario. So we'll look at a classroom, typical classroom, length, width, heights, characteristics of it, and how some systems will perform in that standard type of space. So typical classroom, generally they're about 30 feet by 30 feet. We'll look at another a picture of a typical classroom, about 10 feet in height is your standard typical classroom. What has to be taken into consideration in a proper system is, again, not just the length, width, height dimensions of the room, it's also the acoustic properties. And by that I mean the flooring, the windows, ceiling. So in this particular analogy here, this is a software that was used to basically look at a room and model out to see how sound interacts within a typical classroom. So in that setup, we have to look at the floor is made of, usually it's a type of linoleum floor. We've got a cinder block wall. A lot of times we'll have a chalkboard up front or a smart board up in the front of the classroom. May or may not have windows, so we threw windows on one side. And more typically, we've got a drop ceiling, so we have acoustic tiles up on the ceiling. Also taken into consideration is the audience plane, so the ear level of the students. As well as the plane of the teacher when they're standing. Now we'll begin to look at the energy produced when speaking and how it kind of goes through the room. You will notice down the bottom we have kind of a graph level from colors from blue up to purple. And this is an SPL, sound pressure level graph, which shows, up here a normal coverage and then weak down at the bottom. So as we can see, when a teacher's up at the front of the classroom, they're speaking to the class. In this analogy, we have a student dead center in the classroom. The energy is really constant around that said teacher up in the front. So anybody in the front of the classroom is going to hear quite well. It's going to be fairly clear and direct. But as you start moving back to center classroom, that sound pressure will drop off significantly. As you gear more to the rear of the class, again, it continues to drop. And again, this is without any voiceless system installed. As I mentioned earlier, depending on where the teacher may be speaking, that changes the coverage as well. As they turn around to look at, again, the smartboard or the chalkboard or things as such, you'll notice that now you've got a reduced coverage pattern around them. You also have sound waves reflecting off the hard surfaces, whether it is the board, the hard wall, and then bouncing back. And you have even a lower level of SPL at the rear of the classroom. So again, you're taking away from that intelligibility of the teacher. Moving around the classroom, the teacher, which effectively acts like a hotspot of sound pressure level, moves around. So as you get closer to the back, again, that area can hear quite well, but you start getting different areas that are affected and drop off, more so maybe the front of class and so on. So it's very sporadic, the coverage without a voiceless system in a classroom. to allow, it's very hard to control even coverage so all students can hear equally what's being presented to them. That's definitely a challenge when it comes to schools and the learning process. So what we'll look at next is potential solutions. So one solution we see a lot in the marketplace when we talk about voice lift in the classroom is a 4-speaker solution. It's something we looked at, what's out there, what other manufacturers are doing, and how that really works in a real-life scenario in a classroom. So a typical competitive solution out there would be based upon a ceiling speaker design with 4 speakers in a classroom. So we'll have a look at that and see how it interacts in a classroom and so on. So we'll have 1 speaker in a classroom. As you can see, as we add this 1 speaker, the coverage is quite uniform below the speaker, and that's kind of illustrated in the circular pattern and the waves that come out from that 1 speaker. Again, 1 speaker, this is a conventional speaker. Most conventional speakers have a dispersion of around 90 degrees below the speaker, so think of it like a triangle from the speaker or the small port going down below it in a wide angle, almost like adjusting a flashlight and so on. So a typical speaker is usually around 90 degrees, and this is the coverage pattern you get from, again, this type of typical speaker. Again, 1 speaker of this sort will not suffice in a classroom. You still have dead spotting around. Adding a secondary speaker, you can see it starts to cause issues. You see, some lines here in the coverage pattern, and this is again in relation to intelligibility and sound pressure level. This one I think is directly sound pressure level, but you can see you've got little nodes. You got higher SPL in the center, then it drops off and goes back up. So it's an uneven coverage as those speakers kind of interact in their coverage area and dispersion below the speaker. Definitely in the back, you still have very low SPL, so you need, in this type of scenario, you would add, a couple more speakers maybe. So we'll add an additional 1 here and an additional 1 in the back. So that's a 4-speaker system that a lot of the competitors out there design when it comes to a voice lift system. So you have 4 speakers in the classroom. When you look at the coverage pattern, it's really hit or miss. You've got a lot of energy in certain areas, and then it really drops off, then it gets higher again, and drops out. So it's very sporadic and uneven coverage pattern. This is an effect of the waves coming out from the speakers and interacting with each other. As waves come out, sometimes they'll come out perfectly in phase, and then you'll get an addition of the SPL in a certain area. So you get an addition of sound pressure level. So you can see that in the pink areas. You'll see it's a little bit higher and louder in those areas. Depending where the students are situated, again, that could be quite loud and take away from the educational experience of a voice lift system in that environment. Also, depending how the waves come out, if they had an out-of-phase angle, they could actually subtract and be quieter as they phase out each other's energy. So you have quieter areas in certain areas, like the corners and in between the speakers. So overall, the idea was to increase intelligibility through the classroom, but what you do is have a big variance in coverage in the classroom. You have hot spots, you have, again, quiet spots, so it's really not a solution in the typical classroom of a 30 by 30 by 10-foot ceiling scenario. Additionally, by adding all these speakers, you run into scenarios of feedback. And because you have so much energy in certain areas and the dispersion angle is so low at 90 degrees, you're really focusing that sound below the speaker. And this can create feedback. Everybody's heard feedback. Feedback is a squelch you might have heard when you see someone speaking in the front of a class, or maybe it's at a concert or something like that high-pitched squelch that go through the system that nobody likes. So that can happen very easily in this type of scenario because there is so much energy directly below the speaker and in certain areas. So a lot of our competition will add electronics in there and some processing, and it'll be called feedback elimination to take care of this. What feedback elimination does in a DSP type of scenario is that it takes a certain frequencies that are feeding back and interfering with each other and dropping those out. So it's almost like an automatic EQ. The problem with that type of processing in this environment is that it could take away certain frequencies that are key to intelligibility in a classroom. So that adds to the articulation. Everything that we're trying to do is add to articulation and clarity, But this automatic feedback processing may take away from that because you're losing frequencies. So that's not really desirable in a classroom as well. So you've got, again, in this type of scenario, 4 speakers, you've got uneven coverage as well as a fluctuation in frequency control. May not be the best solution. Next, we'll look at TOA's single ceiling speaker solution with integrated amplifier and IR receiver. We'll get into specifics of the product in a bit, but we'll just look how our speaker performs in a classroom. So we did a lot of research, as I showed you before, on how the competition is handling the classroom environment, and we decided that a single speaker in that environment, the proper single speaker, would perform best. So it's based widely around our F122 wide dispersion ceiling speaker. So we took those, and when I say wide dispersion, we get up to about 180 degrees of dispersion out of the one speaker in a classroom. I'll get into the specifics of each component of our system as we go forward, but we'll look at again, how this one speaker will interact in a classroom, why we chose this. So we see our ceiling speaker mounted up in the center of the classroom, and then we see our coverage pattern. So again, this is using the same program as you use with other manufacturer comparable 4-speaker system we did with our wide dispersion speaker solution. Again, as you can see, you've got nice even coverage through the listener plane. It does tend to drop off a little bit, very minimally, in the extreme corners of the classroom. Generally, your seating area is going to be, go across this way, so nice even coverage. And what you also notice is there's less of this a deviation within the coverage. You're not seeing blue to red, and things like that. You're not seeing a dip in the coverage pattern. So it's nice and clear and fluent throughout the listener plane. And that's really the advantage of that, is that you don't have the fluctuation in coverage pattern. Very important, because that's what we're here to provide a service to do in a classroom, is even coverage. Also, along with that solution, our solution of a single point speaker, is we do spread out the waves, the coverage to 180 degrees. By doing that, the energy directed directly below the speaker is reduced. Some of that energy is spread out to cover, around that speaker in order to give this even coverage. An advantage of that is less hot spotting, and by that I mean less chances of feedback. So this wide dispersion speaker, again, those issues with a 4-speaker solution are non-existent here, or greatly reduced per se, as you don't have that hot spotting. So feedback, processing, and things like that are not required in a TOA solution, because again, they do not have that focused energy directed below the speaker. And by reducing that functionality needed, you reduce the changes in frequency, the reducing of the intelligibility, and so on throughout. So again, there's no fluctuation of the frequency of the teacher when they're speaking to the classroom. It's nice and consistent and even. Here we got a couple pictures, and this is an analogy I use to show this interaction. We have the multiple speakers in a classroom. On the left-hand side, we have, basically think of it like a pond. A nice clear pond, no wind or anything like that. Mirror glass finish. We take 2 pebbles and we drop those 2 pebbles in the pond, and this is what we see. And it's very similar to how a speaker works, and waves radiate from a speaker. So you get speaker A and speaker B, and other manufacturer solutions, you would have 4 of these. But you'll see as those waves come out from the center point of the speaker, you've got interference, and you've got waves that are interacting, getting bigger and smaller in that area. And that holds true with the SPL diagram we showed you prior, that shows you that you'll have those hot spots and then the reduced areas. So this is more of a distortion area where you do reduce and lose intelligibility as these speakers interact. Therefore, this is why in the TOA IR-800 system, we look at a single point speaker. So you get nice even coverage and waves going out from that center point of the speaker without having to worry about hitting each other and phasing issues and so on. Just kind of gives you a real life idea of how that really does happen when you have multiple speakers in that environment. first part, we kind of look at some of the issues in a classroom. Again, why it is important to have voice in the classroom for the student benefit as well as the teacher's benefit. Additionally, we look at some options that there are out there: a conventional 4-speaker classroom system or the TOA IR-800 single-point speaker solution. Now we'll get into the bits and pieces of the TOA solution, how they interact, and the advantages, and some of the technology that goes into them. First slide here, we have a typical full classroom solution. And I'll kind of go through how it all interacts together, and then we'll get in the nuts and bolts of it. We'll start off here with the speaker itself. Again, it's quite key. This is a very innovative solution. So what we have is our wide dispersion speaker. Earlier I mentioned that it is a 180 degree dispersion. That's achieved by a patented diffuser that's located here, which is why the speaker kind of curves down a little bit, that channels that sound out from the speaker and widens that dispersion angle. Additionally, by having that diffuser there, reduces the hot spotting, as I mentioned below, which can and other speakers create feedback. So additionally to the speaker itself, we've got infrared transceivers. So they're mounted directly around the unit themselves. So it's built into the speaker. A lot of the other classroom systems on the market have a separate IR receiver that is part of the system. So you have to run a separate cord back for that, as well as the cables for all the 4 speakers. With ours, we built the IR receivers 360 degrees around and built right into the speaker itself. For the next step, we also decided, okay, well, we need an amplifier in the system. There's no way around that. Most of the competition on the market has a separate amplifier located, maybe near the teacher's desk or something like that. We decided to go and put that amplifier right in the speaker as well. So we've got the speaker, the infrared receivers, as well as the amplifier built right into the speaker. So it's one centralized point of equipment. Also to note that the speaker is also plenum rated, so it's full fire resistant and approved in ceiling spaces. So that's the equipment there. The speaker, very unique, very powerful. When it comes to the connection of the system, it's one Cat 5 that goes right back to the mixer unit, which we'll talk about. So when we look at the installation side of things, that's a big advantage as well. Over and above the sonic qualities and the intelligibility of our system, is reduced labor costs. When you look at other systems on the market which contain 4 speakers, you got wire going from, again, an amplifier or mixer. It's going to one speaker, then over the next speaker, over the next speaker, and then the 4th speaker. You've got 4 holes to cut. You got 4 speakers to mount. That adds to the labor side of things. Additionally, when you have a separate IR receiver, you've got to run a cable for that IR receiver and mount that IR receiver. So you've got a lot more labor in this. In addition to that, you've got a lot more potential of failure when it comes to bad connections from speaker A to speaker B, more equipment that can potentially fail. Troubleshooting issues is definitely higher on a 4-speaker solution. So by going with one single Cat 5 to this unit, we reduce that to 2 connection points and 1 wire and 1 hole. So it's definitely more efficient when installing a lot of these in a school, and it's easier to install, so it's more affordable than a lot of other products on the marketplace. So we have this one Cat 5 that mounts, that connects from the speaker to the mixer. Again, and this is just a mixer. It doesn't require a separate amplifier or a separate box because that's built into the speaker. So in this mixer, we'll go into all the functionality of it when it comes to inputs and outputs. But it's pretty straightforward. The sit on the desk or a wall mount version is available. But it allows you to connect your input source, maybe connection from a smart board, it may be output to assistive listening, it may be audio from a laptop, flash and capture outputs, things like that. One unique point I wanted to show on this illustration, it does have a muting input. So a lot of classrooms will have their standard 25-volt speaker for general PA and announcements. And that's generally separate from the voice lift part of a classroom solution. So what we've incorporated in this mixing part of our system is a muting input. So you take that conventional classroom speaker when the system is involved and run one wire from that down to our unit. What that does is that whenever there's a page, whether it's a general morning announcement or a life safety evacuation scenario call or just calling into the classroom, that regardless of what's going on in this isolated classroom IR system, a voice-up system, that gets muted and that general paging would come through the classroom paging speaker that's allocated for that. So there's no chance that maybe in a presentation where maybe there's a video being watched at a louder level through the classroom system that maybe a page isn't heard or something like that. You alleviate that by having this muting capability between the general paging speaker and the IR classroom system. So again, as mentioned, you can have your local sources, whether it's an iPod or a DVD or laptop, whatever it may be, going into this mixing unit. We do have output on the front for assistive listening or lesson capture. We have controls for your various inputs, as well as provisions for the two microphones. Moving on to that, we have our microphone solutions. So we've got handhelds, or we have the teacher style around the neck lanyard style microphones. So if you look back on the system itself, when it comes to connectivity, it's very simplistic. Again, one Cat5 going back from speaker to mixer, and then you just plug in your sources. But getting to the basics of it, it's there for voice lift of the teacher and aiding in the educational experience. So when it comes down to that side of things, it's really hard for the system to fail or something to be unhooked because you've got wireless microphones and you have one cable, two connections. So it's very, very reliable, and you know, this type of system minimalizes the chance of something being unplugged or a bad connection and so on. We'll jump into now looking at the various components and some of the unique functionality of those. First, we'll look at our speaker. So as I mentioned, it's self-amplified, and it requires 24 volts. That 24 volts is supplied by what I call the mixer, which is, its technical part number is 820SP. So that runs right down the Cat5 line. So it is a wide dispersion speaker. I talked about the benefits of that, even coverage, reduces feedback, and it's a 20-watt speaker. So more than enough power in a classroom environment. Frequency response, 100 Hz to 20K, so very nice even coverage, which is very important in the classroom because some speakers may colorize the sound. The idea is that a teacher speaking at the front of the class, as they speak through the microphone, that goes to an amplifier stage and also the speaker. It should sound very natural. If it colors the sound, then you know the teacher, Mr. Jones, may not sound like Mr. Jones anymore. And that's distracting to the students, especially at the younger ages, because they may sound very different, maybe nasally, maybe very bottom and heavy, a lot of bass in their voice, and that can take away from the educational experience as well. So again, the dispersion of the speaker is definitely key in that it's quite accurate and doesn't color the sound. We do use a full range speaker. And to touch upon that, there's two types of speakers, a full range speaker, and there could be a 2- or 3-way, but we'll look at a 2-way. A 2-way speaker that a lot of the competition uses and other systems on the marketplace will contain a woofer and a tweeter. So the tweeter handles the high frequencies or mid to high, and the woofer is mid to low. In between that, there's a little circuit called a crossover. And a crossover basically says when the signal goes to the speaker, I want the tweeter to handle the highs and the woofer to handle the lows. Part of the issue with that is that crossover generally resides and lives right in the frequencies that the human speech uses. So there's a potential going through that crossover that we color the sound a little bit. So in our design of our system, we decided to use a full range driver. So there's no tweeter, it's the one physical speaker that can handle the mid-range quite intelligibly and accurately without coloring the sound. So sometimes it goes back to the basis of keep it simple. And rather than getting extra electronics, let's use the proper driver for the application. In that case, this was the wide dispersion full range speaker. One big advantage which is built into the speaker. I mentioned it's an amplifier. The amplifier is built into it. And it's not just any amplifier. There's various styles of amplifiers out there. Conventionally used in these type of systems out there is a Class A or B amplifier, an analog amplifier. We've chosen to use a Class D amplifier, and a Class D is a digital amplifier. The reason we chose this this type of amplifier is for its efficiency. A Class B is very efficient. A conventional analog amplifier could be down around 40% efficient. A Class D amplifier could be in the range of 80, usually in the range of 80 to 90% efficient. So we look at a school, we look at one school, there could be 50 of these systems in this school, but then we look at a district, multiple hundreds, we look at a province, thousands. So that's hundreds, thousands of these systems that are on 24/7 running. So a Class D amplifier being so efficient is more of a green type solution. So again, it's a cost savings to the end user because again, it's not eating away electricity while it's not being used. And when it isn't used, it's very efficient how it handles its power requirements. So Class D is definitely advantageous when you have a lot of these systems installed. Built into the unit are 2 channels of infrared, and we have 360-degree coverage around the unit themselves. One thing to note is that we've specifically chosen the band of the infrared. There are various bands to look at, and we did a lot of research on other classroom technologies, plasmas, LCDs, projectors, smartboards, and things as such, and look at where their infrared controls, like remote controls, things like that, what frequency bands they are living in. And we went outside of those common frequencies, just to alleviate any chance that another classroom technology could interfere and things like that. So we really did a lot of research into looking at what bands we should use for the infrared. Additionally, the speaker is plenum rated, UL 2043, to be used in the case that the above the drop ceiling is a plenum return or anything like that. So it is a plenum rated speaker. Again, single Cat5 connection from the speaker to the control unit, the 802T. In our kit that we supply, the Cat5 cable is included, and it is a plenum FT6 rated Cat5 cable, so that matches the plenum rating of the speakers. We also looked at the ruggedness of the support for the speaker. So we have an 8-style support ruggedized rail system to go above the drop ceiling to support on the tile rail system that the acoustic tile sit in. We also added a second level of safety in an accessory safety wire. So there is a point where you add a wire that actually does come with the system itself, and there's a point where you can connect onto a steel beam. So again, it's kind of double safety that speaker is going to stay there and never going to fall out and those type of things. So we knew that that's very, very important in the installation side of things. Moving to the next part of the solution, we've got the 802T. I call it a mixture because this is where you plug your inputs to control your volume levels, and it does feed the information to the speaker as well. So again, this is a 200-volt DC power. It's a 2-channel infrared receiver. It gets connected to it via the one speaker. So it's 2 channels. You do see on the front, there's your control for your inputs. So it's a volume for the teacher or a volume for the student. Single Cat5, as mentioned, to the speaker itself. So your inputs are your teacher's pendant mic and a student mic. One thing important to notice is that you can have any combination of both. It could be, 2 handheld microphones or 2 pendant-style microphones. You can use either or, it doesn't matter. You have inputs for auxiliary 1. Let's say computer. We have them labeled as computer. We have auxiliary 2, which could be DVD, a laptop, whatever you wish. And auxiliary 3. 2 of the auxiliaries are located on the rear of the unit, and I believe we had, sorry, my mistake, all 3 are on the rear of the unit. Again, reason for that is to reduce the chance of a student unplugging it or anything like that, so they're located on the rear. On the front of it, we do have an output as opposed to an input, and that output is for an assistive listening device. So any students that require additional special equipment, you can connect directly to this. So a lot of times they'll carry those assistive listening products around with them from class to class. So they'd walk, into class A, simple connection to the front of the unit via this port right here. They can turn the level and adjust it a little bit, and away they go. And then a simple disconnect as well when they're moving, to another classroom. We do have basic EQ filters should you choose to change a little bit of equalization, so bass, mid, and low. Majority of the time, these are set right at 0, right in the middle, so you don't color the sound. But depending on the room acoustics, maybe you want to add a little bit more bottom end for presentation temporarily or something like that. As I mentioned, we do have muting for the classroom system when a PA comes through, so that's directly related to this unit. And there's rack mount options as well as a wall mount bracket for this unit. So there is a bracket available that this slides into, locks into, mounts right to the wall, and then there's a platform above for the charging base to mount to. The one thing nice about this wall mount bracket, which is included in the kit, is that it reduces the connection points. So students in their busy hands can't get back at it and unplug something or try to plug their own unit into their MP3, trying to play around with the system. It reduces the chance that the system will be compromised or unplugged and it doesn't work when it needs to work. So it's a nice wall mount bracket. Moving next, on the pendant teacher's microphone. So that's this unit right here. It's got wide coverage IR emitters. A lot of times when I'll demonstrate this unit, I've got a unit where the IR emitters are right behind this black kind of cover here, but it's not opaque. You can actually, that's what the IR emitters are transmitting through. I usually take off this part, and most people are quite impressed. We've definitely, if you say, over-engineered the IR side of things to make sure that we get good coverage of the infrared signal. So it's a wide array of IR emitters through here. I believe it's 4 or 6. So there's emitters that shoot forward as well as shoot down and to the sides. So we looked at their scenarios of teachers walking around and any droplets that could occur. And when I demonstrate this unit, I can go right into the corner of a classroom, and it does radiate and does transmit quite well. You definitely reduce any chance of dropouts. So the infrareds, again, cover all the way around this front face of this microphone. It does have a breakaway lanyard. So again, there's your lanyard that comes with it, but if a student decides to get rambunctious and try to grab it, again, it will break away so that the teacher's not harmed. It is a condenser microphone element in here, so the microphone is right built in here. So in a condenser style microphone is very sensitive, which is what we want here because it's going to be mounted, below the chin a little bit, and we want it to pick up. Ideally, it is an omnidirectional microphone, so it picks up around the mouth quite well and adequately. On the unit as well is a low battery indicator to let the teacher know that, hey, the battery's starting to get a little bit low, just to pay attention, something to grab their attention so they're aware. Additionally, there is an input on the side for an external headset microphone. It may be a headset style or maybe a lavalier or around the ear type solution, but some teachers wish to use a different style of microphone, and again, there's no issues with that, adding that to the pendant teacher's microphone itself. Rechargeable batteries, I mentioned that below, but again, it's 2 AA batteries, which power it, and it is, the coating of it is the antibacterial treated coating, so it's easy to clean and so on. So maintenance is quite low when there's fear of spreading cold and things like that in the classroom scenario. Next below, we'll look at the battery charger, the IR-800 BC. So this is a 2-bay battery charger, as you can see. Now, the picture here shows it configured for the handheld microphone. You can see the circle right there. That's where the handheld microphone would fit down into it. But this little adapter actually pulls out, and that's where you can cradle in the teacher's pendant microphone into it. So out of the box, it could be used either way. One key point about this charger that we research a lot compared to others out in the market is it is a smart charger. And what I mean by that is, I guess it's a few points down, but our system works off nickel metal hydride rechargeable batteries. But there is a potential where students, maybe they forgot to charge their unit and they say, well, I'm going to put in these alkaline batteries that I have here out of this remote and we'll get the system working. The problem is they may forget to take those alkaline batteries out, and they put them into to chargers that may not be smart chargers. So some of the other units out there, you could run into problems because the recharger tries to charge a non-rechargeable battery, and that can create serious issues. So we designed our battery charger to be smart, to recognize, hey, if these batteries aren't nickel metal hydride rechargeable batteries, we just shut off. So it will not, apply any charge to the battery. So there's no issue that maybe if a teacher did forget that he put in alkalines to get him through a class to take them out, that he puts them in this charger, there's no issues. The unit just won't charge them. So it's more of a safety issue that we built into this. One key point is rapid charge. So again, as I mentioned, the teacher may have forgotten to charge the unit overnight or things like that. It is a quick charge time. We get 3 hours to charge these units up. And that relates nicely. The talk time on the unit down here is 8 hours. So we get 8 hours talk time, no problem, and a 3-hour recharge time. As I mentioned, they are nickel metal hydride batteries. They are a AA battery. One key part here is that they are a non-proprietary battery. They are a nickel metal hydride AA battery. There's nothing special about them. TOA as a company are not here to sell batteries. We're here to provide audio solutions. So per se, if a battery gets lost or anything like that, it's not a special battery that only fits in there. It's a conventional battery. So if you needed to pick something up locally, that's not an issue as long as the nickel metal hydride rechargeable AA battery, it would work in our system. There's nothing special about that part of it. And this is what we heard, as we talked to various school boards, is that they're not stuck buying a certain kind of battery down the road, is that it's easily and readily available. And we took those considerations into account when we designed our system. Next, we'll look below at the IR-800M, the handheld student's microphone. I'm talking about the infrared. It's a little small here, I apologize to see. But again, talk about wide coverage. And we definitely put the IRs in here to give, reduce any potential dropout. So it's hard to see, but it's ergonomically fitted. So this would be the back of the microphone that the student would hold towards themselves. In the front, you can kind of see this black little area that would sit kind of above the front of your hand, and that's what emits out the infrared signal. So I believe there's 4 IR emitters on the front of it, spaced out to offer good wide coverage to the front, above, and below the microphone. A nice little thought they had too is, there's potential that maybe the student picks it up backwards or something like that. We also built in an infrared transmitter on the back of the microphone, so it reduces that chance that the signal's not going to get where it needs to get. We realized too it has to be lightweight, so it's very lightweight in its construction, which is key because again you're dealing with students from kindergarten up to not so much issue in grade 12, but in the lower grades, the weight is definitely a factor. So we took that into consideration. Again, a condenser style microphone, so it's very sensitive. Low battery indicator. Same microphones, AA nickel metal hydride rechargeable batteries, as well as the antibacterial treatment, so it's very easy to clean. One thing to note too, we did a lot of research in how the microphones themselves, whether it's the pendant teacher microphone above here or the student microphone, how they connect and go into this cradle. For example, on the back of the student microphone, the connections are 360 degrees around it, so they kind of go in a circle. So there's one set of connections in the center, and then one around that. So at 360 degrees, and what that means is no matter how you put that microphone into the charger, it's going to make connection, it's going to charge. So, the student doesn't have to pay attention. The teacher doesn't have to pay attention. Hey, did I put that microphone in correctly? Did Bobby put that microphone in correctly? You can't put it in the wrong way. And again, that's very important because this system has to be simple to use. And that's the key. When a teacher wants to start their morning classes, the system, it's got to be charged. It's got to be ready to go. You don't want to run in the situation. Oh, geez, the microphone wasn't put in there. It was put in backwards. Things like that, and the batteries aren't charged. What do I do now? So we reduce that and realize that's an important part of the system is the functionality of it. So again, we built that into the charging contacts too. So we're getting near the conclusion. We'll go again over some of the advantages of the TOA IR-800 system and its advantages. Industry-proven single-point wide dispersion speaker. This is what TOA is renowned for. It's a patent design, and it's quite understood in the university, in the market, and in the education market for sure, and throughout various other applications. Widely known and recognized for its even coverage and reduced feedback characteristics. So we just modified that and worked that into the solution. No delay artifacts from multiple point speakers. Again, we reduce the interaction between multiple point speakers and their waves interacting, which is nice, reduces that delay. No multiple feedback or resonant hotspots. Again, it's one single wide dispersion speaker, so we reduce that out of the scenario. And as I mentioned earlier, a lot of the functionality is to keep it simple. The more, if you have to add electronic processing for feedback and delays and all this, it's just a Band-Aid to fix a solution. We decided to engineer it properly from the get-go, so the right speaker, the right amplifier, so this DSP and functionality isn't needed. Even sound pressure level throughout the audience plane, as we illustrated earlier. Nice, good covers. Simple installation, one speaker to the mixer. Again, it also comes down to dollars and cents, and the more time being spent to install these, everybody has their budget. So we realized that we wanted to keep it simple, as well as allow it easy to be installed. Single Cat5 connection provides power and the signal. Reduced quantity of connections or products. So there's not a separate mixer, an amplifier, transceiver, and things like that, which other solutions provide. Ours is one Cat5 connection. So by reducing the amount of connection, reduce the chance that the system's going to fail, service calls, things like that. As I mentioned, reduce labor to install. Reliable, proven multi-source IR transmitters integrated in the speaker. IR is not new for us. We're quite well known for our infrared conference system that's been in the market for multiple years to great praise. So we took that technology that's been tried, tested, and true per se, and moved it into this system. There's no separate IR receivers to install in the ceiling. There's no limit with infrared to the number of systems in a school. There's multiple inputs for the classroom, audio sources, 2 mics, computer, TV, MP3, any kind of line level output. We have the assistive listening device, ALD, output, as well as it can be used for lesson capture. A lot of times we're seeing that in schools with their smart type boards to allow you to record lesson as well as audibly and visually. So we have the provisions there. Lightweight student microphones, which is key. Headset microphone capability for the teachers to choose. And a very smart battery charger holder for the teacher and student microphones. There's 2 options. Well, I guess there's 3. One option is to order the system a la carte, so bits and pieces individually. But more than often, you're going to order a kit, and there's 2 kits available. So the kit would be an IR-800 Kit 1. And that kit includes pretty much everything you need in a system. We'll go through that quickly here. So the kit includes the IR-820 SP. So that's your speaker, amplifier, IR receiver unit. So we get the speaker, the tuner mixer. We've got the teacher's pendant microphone. We've got the battery charger. We've got the pair of the batteries. We've got the wall mount bracket, the robust top bridge support for the ceiling rails. We also include Rca cables and connection cables. So again, right out of the box, that you can connect the laptop to it or things like that, local source equipment in the classroom. There's a stereo input, so that's a mini jack. So the above is RCA, then we have a 3.5 mini jack. And again, that could be from an MP3 end of the unit, or maybe the assistive listening device, maybe a mini jack style. So that's included in the box, as well as a 50-foot pre-terminated plenum-rated Cat5 cable. So this box, it will provide the full solution in the classroom. All the cables, connections, things like that. We wanted to make it quite easy to install and affordable on the labor side of things to put one of these in. So that's the IR-800 Kit 1. We also have an IR-800 Kit 2. So really what that is everything above here, all the connection cables, everything else, but we added the student microphone and the student microphone batteries. So again, some school boards, provinces across Canada, their requirements are different. Some it's just a teacher's microphone for IR classroom voice lift. In other areas, it's a teacher's microphone and a student microphone. So this allows, two potential complete solutions in one box. There are a couple additional accessories you can add. If you want to rack mount the system, some classrooms will have a little a cabinet that they want to keep the equipment in and so on. There's provisions for that. So there's a rack mount kit that will allow you to mount a standard rack cabinet. And there are headset microphones available, a few different styles here around the ear, very slim single ear or around the back of the neck style. So there's options for the external microphone that can be connected to the pendant microphone, should a teacher choose. And in scenarios where it may not be a drop ceiling and it's an open ceiling, there is a surface mount back can, so the speaker can be mounted in a nice white can up in the top of the ceiling in those scenarios where the room changes configuration a little bit. And that pretty much covers the TOA classroom voice system, the IR-800. I hope it answered a lot of your questions to how the system works and the applications it's being used, why it's being used, and the technology behind it.